I don't know why I still remember the way she said it. Maybe because it didn't sound like a question. It was more like she was drawing a line with her voice, as if she wanted me to see it and then decide if I was willing to step across. "You're younger than me." I had grease on my hands that afternoon, standing behind the counter of the small repair shop where I'd been working since I dropped out of school. She had walked in holding an old radio, the kind with wood panels and dials that looked like they belonged in someone's grandfather's attic. She didn't look like someone who'd carry junk like that, but then again, she didn't look like someone who'd walk into a shop like mine either. She was in her mid-40s, maybe, though it felt impossible to guess. Her hair was tied back, but loose strands kept falling across her face, as if even her own hair didn't have the courage to stay in place around her. Her shirt was simple, pale blue, but there was something about the way she carried herself, like she'd already survived too many things to bother proving anything to anyone. I remember fumbling, wiping my hands on the cloth tucked into my belt. "But old enough for you," I said, and I don't know where the words came from. They just slipped out. Half a smile caught on my mouth before I realized what I'd done. She stopped. Not long, just a second too long. Her lips pressed together, and her eyes narrowed, not angry, not amused either, just considering. That pause stuck in the air heavier than the smell of oil and dust around us. I looked away first, grabbing the radio from her hands as if that was the only reason she'd come here. "These things don't really get fixed anymore," I muttered, turning it over. My voice sounded wrong in my own ears. Too quick, like I was trying to erase what I just said. "It doesn't have to work," she replied, her tone softer now. "I just don't want to throw it away." I nodded, though I didn't really understand. People usually came in here to save money, not memories. She brushed her fingers against the counter absent-mindedly, tapping once, twice, and then stopping when she realized I was watching. For the next few minutes, I pretended to check the radio, unscrewing the back, poking around wires that I knew wouldn't lead anywhere. She didn't hurry me. She leaned against the wall instead, her arms crossed, her gaze drifting across the clutter of spare parts and broken appliances. I kept stealing glances, thinking I was subtle. But when my eyes flicked up once more, hers were already on me. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Me pretending to work, her pretending not to notice. What I do know is that my chest felt tight, like I was holding my breath without meaning to. Finally, she said, "If it's too much trouble, I can leave it here. You don't have to rush." Her voice carried a weight I couldn't place. A kind of weariness, but not defeat. Like someone who was used to being let down but didn't mind anymore. I told her I'd look into it, even though I already knew the radio would never play again. She smiled, just enough to crease the corners of her eyes. Then she turned to go, her steps unhurried, as if the world had slowed for her and she was in no rush to catch up. The bell above the door rang once as she left, and the sound seemed sharper than usual, echoing in the empty space she left behind. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. The radio sat on my workbench like a challenge I hadn't asked for. I knew from the first glance that it was beyond repair. Wires frayed, the tuner stiff, speakers long dead. Still, I kept opening it, tightening screws, pretending it wasn't useless. Maybe it wasn't about the radio at all. Maybe it was about her. She came back 2 days later, the same pale blue shirt but a different necklace. A thin silver chain with a small charm that looked worn smooth by years of touch. When she leaned on the counter, I noticed her nails were short, clean, unpolished. That detail shouldn't have mattered, but somehow it did. "Any progress?" she asked. I hesitated. "It's complicated." Her smile was quick, almost like she was expecting that answer. She didn't press, just stood there, her hands resting lightly on the counter, as if she had nowhere else she wanted to be. That unsettled me more than if she had been impatient. People didn't linger here. They dropped things off, complained about prices, left. She stayed. "You don't have to fix it if it's too much," she said after a pause. Her voice lowered, softer. It belonged to my father. He used to play it on Sunday mornings. I just like having it close. I didn't know what to say to that. My father left when I was a kid, and the only thing he left behind was silence. No broken radio, no memory worth holding on to. Just silence that never went away. I'll try, I murmured, not looking at her. My hands were already moving across the screws again, like the lie needed proof. She shifted, stepping closer to see what I was doing. The smell of her perfume, something faint, floral, but not sweet, brushed against me. I froze for a moment, caught between wanting to step back and wanting to stay exactly where I was. "You're younger than me," she repeated suddenly, and this time it sounded different, less like a warning, more like curiosity. "Still old enough?" I said again, though my voice didn't come out steady. My fingers tightened around the screwdriver, and I felt heat rise to my neck. Her eyes lingered on me longer than they should have. Couldn't look away. It felt dangerous, like standing too close to a flame, knowing it could catch but refusing to step back. "I just came out of something," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I don't know why I told you that." I swallowed. My throat felt dry. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. Maybe because I was afraid of the answer. Maybe because it wasn't my place. The shop felt too quiet then, only the faint ticking of the wall clock filling the space. She broke it by brushing her hand against the counter again. Only this time her fingers touched my arm, so lightly I almost thought I imagined it. "You don't have to finish tonight," she said, but she didn't move her hand away. "Stay a little longer. Just talk to me." My heart thudded in my chest. Words rose to my lips, something reckless, something I shouldn't say, but I bit them back, caught in the silence between us. And that silence said everything. I kept telling myself I was just fixing a radio, nothing more. But the way she leaned in that night, her hand resting on my arm like it belonged there, made the screwdriver slip from my grip and clatter onto the bench. "Sorry," I muttered, too quickly, bending to pick it up. My fingers shook, not from the tool but from her. When I straightened, she was closer than before. I hadn't heard her step forward. Her eyes searched my face like she was trying to read something I didn't want to give away. "You don't talk much," she said softly. "I do when I need to," I answered, though the words sounded weak. My throat felt tight. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. "And when you don't need to?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Instead, I looked at her hand still on my arm. She noticed too. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled it away, as though testing how much space there really was between us. Something in my chest ached the moment her touch left. I tried to change the subject, fumbling with the radio again. "The wiring's shot. I can maybe rethread it, but it'll take time." She didn't care about the radio, not really. "Then take your time," she said, her voice low enough that it made the air feel heavier. For a moment, I almost said something I shouldn't have. About how I'd stay late if it meant she'd keep coming back. About how I wasn't sure if I wanted to fix the radio or just hold on to an excuse to see her. But before the words could escape, my phone buzzed in my pocket, loud against the silence. I jumped, fumbling to silence it. My friend's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. "You should answer," she said, but she didn't sound like she wanted me to. "It's nothing." I shoved the phone aside, trying to steady myself. But my pulse wouldn't settle. The shop door creaked then. Both of us turned sharply. It was just an old man passing by, peering in for a second before moving on. But the sound had already broken whatever fragile thing had been hanging in the air. She exhaled, and it almost sounded like a laugh, low, nervous, unfinished. "We shouldn't," she started, then stopped. "We're not doing anything," I said quickly. Too quickly. My voice betrayed me, carrying a crack I couldn't hide. Her gaze locked on mine, steady and unflinching. The silence stretched again. long enough for me to feel the weight of everything unsaid pressing against us. She reached out, almost without thinking, and brushed a bit of grease from my wrist where I hadn't cleaned it off. The touch was so small, so ordinary, and yet it burned. I should have pulled back. I didn't. The bell above the shop door jingled faintly with the evening breeze, even though no one entered. And for a split second it felt like the world was daring us, daring me to cross the line. The shop was supposed to close an hour ago, but neither of us moved toward the door. The only light came from the desk lamp, its yellow glow cutting shadows across her face. It made her look softer, but also harder to read. "You stay late often?" she asked, her voice low. "Not really," I said, fiddling with the back panel of the radio. "Only when there's a reason." She tilted her head. "And am I the reason tonight?" The screwdriver slipped in my hand. I set it down too hard, the sound sharp in the quiet. I didn't answer right away, because the truth sat too close to my tongue, and once spoken it couldn't be taken back. "You don't have to answer," she added quickly, but her eyes didn't leave mine. Something in me snapped at that, the way she acted like she was protecting me, when it was me who couldn't stop orbiting her. I don't get it," I blurted. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "You could go anywhere, talk to anyone. Why here? Why me?" Her face didn't flinch, but her hands curled slightly against the counter, as if she needed to hold on to something. "Because you listen," she said simply. "That's it. That's everything," she murmured. The words hit harder than I expected. I swallowed, my throat tight, my chest heavier. I should have laughed it off. Should have said something to defuse the heat crawling up my skin. Instead, what came out was, "I don't want to just listen." Her breath caught, I heard it, felt it. Her lips parted like she had an answer ready, but nothing came. The silence pressed against us, thick enough to choke. "Don't," she whispered finally, but it didn't sound like a command. It sounded like a plea. I stepped closer, just enough that her perfume brushed against me again. My hands hovered at my sides, useless, trembling. "Then tell me to stop," I said, almost daring her. Her eyes flickered, uncertain, and for the first time she looked afraid. Not of me, but of herself. "I just came out of something I shouldn't have been in," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I told myself I wouldn't, not again. Especially not with someone like you." "Someone like me? You're young. You don't know what this could do to you." To me. She was right. I knew she was right, but the distance between us had already collapsed, and I couldn't imagine stepping back into the safety of before. The clock on the wall ticked once, loud and mocking. We stood there, staring, every second stretching longer, harder. I felt the words pushing at my lips, reckless and sharp. "I want you." But I didn't say it. Neither did she. Instead, we just stood in that loaded silence, our eyes locked, knowing that one more breath, one more step would change everything. The silence between us had stretched so far it felt like the walls themselves were listening. I could hear my own heartbeat, heavy and reckless, when suddenly she broke the spell. "You remind me of him," she said, her voice low, almost trembling. My chest tightened. "Who?" She looked down, fingers tracing the edge of the counter like she was trying to ground herself. "The man I was with before. He was younger, too. Not as young as you, but close enough. I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I could keep it under control." The air in the shop shifted, colder somehow. For a second, I didn't know whether to feel relieved that I wasn't imagining this, or crushed that I was stepping into someone else's shadow. "So I'm just a replacement," I muttered before I could stop myself. Her eyes shot up, sharp, wounded. "No, that's not what I meant." "Then what do you mean?" My voice was louder than I intended, almost desperate. "Because right now it feels like I'm some echo of your past mistake." She flinched at that word, mistake. For the first time, her composure cracked. Her shoulders slumped, and her gaze softened. "He left," she admitted, almost whispering. "He left because I pushed him away before it could hurt us both. And I thought that was the right choice. But it still hurt." Her confession hit me harder than anything else she'd said. She wasn't careless, wasn't playing games. She was scared. Scared of herself. Scared of what this could turn into. I wanted to tell her I wasn't him, that I wouldn't leave, that I wasn't afraid of the cost. But my mouth wouldn't cooperate. My thoughts scrambled, colliding between wanting her and fearing she'd never really see me for myself. The moment twisted again when the shop door rattled open. My boss leaned in, keys jangling in his hand. "You're still here?" he asked, eyes flicking from me to her, then back again. The weight of what he might have seen hung in the air like smoke. "I was just picking something up," she said quickly, her voice suddenly light, controlled, practiced, a lie, but smooth enough to slide past. He grunted, unconvinced, but didn't press. "Lock up when you're done," he told me, then disappeared into the night, the bell chiming as the door shut behind him. The silence returned, sharper now, edged with danger. "You didn't have to cover for me," I said quietly. Her eyes lingered on me, unreadable. "I wasn't covering for you," she whispered. "I was covering for myself." The honesty in her words cut deep. I didn't know whether to step closer or walk away. My hands curled into fists at my sides, the weight of choice pressing down on me. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about us anymore. The world was starting to notice. After my boss left, the air in the shop felt heavier, like the walls had soaked up everything unsaid and were waiting for us to spill it. She didn't move right away. She just stood there, hands braced against the counter, her head slightly bowed. I wanted to break the silence, but my throat locked. Finally, she did it for me. "You don't know what you're asking for," she said, her voice low but firm. "This isn't just about you wanting me, or me wanting you. It's about what happens after." Her words should have cooled me down, but instead they burned. "Then tell me," I said, stepping closer. My hands shaking though I tried to hide it. "Tell me what happens after. Because all I know is I keep thinking about you, and I don't want to stop." She closed her eyes, as if the weight of my words was too much to bear. When she opened them again, they shone with something rawer than I'd ever seen. "I'm scared," she admitted. Just 2 words, but they cracked something open. I swallowed hard. So am I. For the first time, we weren't dodging, weren't covering our tracks with half-smiles or excuses. We were standing in the truth of it, trembling but unwilling to look away. She let out a shaky breath. "You deserve someone who can give you more than this. Not someone with baggage, with regrets, with years you haven't lived yet." My chest ached. "Maybe I don't want more. Maybe I just want you." Her lips parted, like she wanted to argue, but no words came. Instead, she reached out and touched my face. Not hesitant this time, but steady, her palm warm against my cheek. The contact stole my breath. "I shouldn't," she whispered, though her hand didn't move. "Then don't say it," I whispered back. For a long, suspended moment, it felt like the whole world narrowed to the space between us. The hum of the lamp, the tick of the clock, the faint scent of oil and her perfume mixing in the air. All of it blurred until there was only her eyes, her touch, and the question hanging between us. I leaned in, not enough to close the distance, but enough that she could feel the choice waiting. Her thumb brushed lightly along my jaw, trembling. Then, instead of pulling away, she leaned forward, just slightly, just enough to erase all doubt. Her forehead rested against mine. No kiss, no breaking point, just the quiet, undeniable admission of closeness. "We can't go back after this," she murmured. "I don't want to," I said. The clock ticked again, louder somehow, and I knew we'd crossed a line even without touching lips. Something had shifted, permanent, irreversible. And for once, neither of us tried to pretend otherwise. The next morning, the shop looked the same as it always had. Cluttered shelves, dust in the corners, the broken radio still sitting on my bench. But nothing inside me felt the same. I kept replaying the moment from the night before. Her forehead against mine, her hand cupping my cheek, the silence between us louder than words. We hadn't kissed. We hadn't confessed outright. But we had admitted something neither of us could take back. When she walked in again, I half expected her to act like nothing happened, to smooth it over with small talk, to bury it under the routine. But she didn't. She set her bag down on the counter, looked me straight in the eye, and said quietly, "We have to be careful." It wasn't rejection. It wasn't avoidance. It was acknowledgement, and that somehow felt more intimate than anything else. I nodded. Careful doesn't mean pretending. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. No, not pretending. The radio sat between us, still broken, but it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that she had trusted me enough to be vulnerable, and I had chosen to stand in that truth with her, even knowing the risks. We talked then, not about the radio, but about small things. Her father's Sunday mornings, the way the house felt too quiet now, how she still reached for someone who wasn't there anymore. I told her about dropping out, about how I worked here because I didn't know what else I was good at. For the first time, it didn't feel like confessing weaknesses. It felt like trading pieces of ourselves, carefully, gently, as if each word was a fragile thing that might break if handled wrong. By the time she left, the sun was sliding lower in the sky, casting the shop in a warm orange glow. She touched my arm once before she stepped out. Not a promise, not a guarantee, just a reminder that last night hadn't been a dream. As the bell above the door rang after her, I realized something. The danger wasn't in crossing the line. The danger was in pretending the line had never existed. Maybe we would fall apart. Maybe we'd decide the weight of it was too heavy. Or maybe, just maybe, we'd prove ourselves wrong. But whatever happened, I knew one thing. She had seen me. Not the kid with grease on his hands, not the dropout, not the replacement for someone else. Me. And that was enough to change everything. That night, I didn't replay her warning in my head. I replayed the quiet courage in her voice when she admitted, "I'm scared." And I realized the only thing scarier than falling into this was walking away from it.